Hi, my name is Ron Howard, and today I'll be talking to you about managing personal finances. One important aspect of managing personal finances is budgeting. A budget is a plan which keeps expenses within your means. I've always liked the quote by Benjamin Franklin, "If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail." And that holds true in many things in life, including money. If you don't make a plan for your money, by the end of the week or the end of the month, you're going to find that your money's all gone and you don't really remember even where it went. You don't have anything left. But if you budget your money, you make a plan, you're going to be in much better shape. Your income must exceed your spending to allow savings. You cannot spend every penny you make or even more than you make via credit and still have savings, and you want to definitely have some savings. Now, there are 5 main categories of budgets: giving, saving, spending, taxes, and debt. And the important thing to remember about a budget is budgets are great in theory, but you got to actually put them into practice. A budget will only work if you actually do create one and then stick to it. And an example would be a prescription. If you're not feeling well and you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you a prescription, that's all well and good, but you have to actually get the prescription filled at the pharmacy, and then you have to bring the medication home and you have to take it as directed. If you don't get the prescription filled, or if you get it filled but you don't take it, it's not going to help you. So a budget is good, but you have to actually make one and you have to follow it for it to work for you. Another thing to consider when thinking about managing your personal finances is debt. While debt can sometimes be necessary, for example, to buy a house or something like that, or maybe go to college, we really have to be very, very careful with debt. It's not something to take lightly. It's not something to get into without giving it some thought beforehand. We definitely want to go in with eyes wide open if we're going to consider taking on some debt. We really need to know the difference between a want and a need. Just because we may want something doesn't mean that we need it, and we have to know the difference. Luke chapter 14, verse 28 talks about impulse buying and how it can be avoided with intentional planning. Consider how long and how hard you have to work to make the money to buy something you're interested in purchasing. Just as an example, if you're thinking of buying a new TV and say it costs $500, and we'll say you make about $20 an hour at your job. If you make $20 an hour at your job, you'd have to work 25 hours, and that's not even taking into consideration taxes and things like that. But just as a ballpark figure, we'll say $20 an hour, you have to work about 25 hours to make $500. And the TV you want costs $500. So is it worth it? Is it worth 25 hours of your time and your labor for that TV? Maybe it is. But it's definitely something you want to consider and think about. It's not something you want to just say, hey, let's buy that TV and just buy it. You got to really think how much effort you had to put forth to get the money to buy that and decide if it's really worth it or not. Just make an educated decision is the important thing. In Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, we see that the borrower is a slave to the lender. The borrower is the slave to the lender. So why would we want to choose to be slaves? Nobody really wants to be a slave, right? So like I say, while debt sometimes may be necessary, it's definitely not something we want to take lightly, and it's definitely not something we want to get tons and tons of debt and then have to worry about it later on, because you will have to worry about it later on. It will come back at some point in the future when you owe a lot of money. You try to get another loan or you're trying to build your credit. If you have a ton of debt, it's going to hurt you. There are 6 main forms of debt, and they are credit card debt, consumer debt, mortgage debt, investment debt, business debt, and college debt. It's always a good idea to seek Christian counsel whenever possible and to get the advice of professionals. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 22 says, "Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed." We really should strongly consider working with experienced professionals, preferably Christians if possible, in financial concerns such as investing, insurance, and taxes. We could greatly benefit from their knowledge and their experience. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 10 tells us that we should not want to make ourselves rich. Our goal should not to be rich. We should be content with what we have. We should not let money become an idol for us either. Very important. Money in marriage and families. With our money in marriage and families, we have to be very careful of a few things. For one thing, a consumptive lifestyle We really have to be careful about consuming more than we need, biting off more than we can chew, really. We have to watch our spending, and we really need to think long term rather than short term, and be very cautious of seeking instant gratification. Now, when I think of the phrase instant gratification, I think of the little kid at the supermarket in the seat of the cart, the shopping cart, a 2 or 3 year old kid, and his mother or father is putting up the groceries on the conveyor belt to pay for them, and the little kid's sitting there, and they look at the candy, and that's why the candy's there, so that both adults and kids will look at that candy and want it. And the kid sees the candy bars, and they want their candy bar, their favorite bar, and they say, "Mom, Dad, I want this candy bar." And if the parent says no, a lot of times the kids will throw a temper tantrum, and they want that candy bar, and they want it right now, and nothing's going to talk them out of that. And if they don't get it, they're going to have a tantrum. They're going to have a fit. That's one thing for little kids, but as adults, we really shouldn't be like that. We might not actually have a fit, but we should be able to say no to ourselves. We should have that self-discipline to say, hey, I don't need a new car. There's nothing wrong with my car that I have now. Yeah, it's a little old, but it's fine, and I can use it for another 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be. So be careful of a consumptive lifestyle. Second thing to be careful of is not having or following a budget. Now, I talked about budgeting a few slides back, but the bottom line is you need to spend less than you earn. Have a rainy day fund. Have an emergency fund. It's good to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved. So if something comes up, a health issue or a job loss or anything, death in the family, a million things can come up. Look at what's going on right now. Right now in this country and in the world, we have this pandemic known as COVID-19 or the coronavirus. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I never saw this coming, and probably not a lot of people did. But it's here, and if people didn't save up and didn't plan ahead, now they're hoping that they can get government assistance. People going to food pantries, they're doing what they have to do, and it's a terrible situation. It's tough. But if you plan ahead and save some money, it'll still be stressful, but it will be not quite as stressful as if you don't have any money saved at all. A third thing to be careful with is expensive cars. Cars are not a good investment. For the most part, they do not appreciate in value, with some very rare exceptions, such as classic cars that have been restored, things like that. But in general, cars are not an investment. They depreciate greatly in value. When you buy a brand new car and you drive it off the lot, 5 minutes later, that's gone down, several $1,000s in value. It's considered a used car. If the next day you decide you want to sell it, it's a used car, and you're going to get a lot less than you paid for it. So cars are a very poor investment. You're better off buying a quality used car and using that for years to come. Good money management in the family. It's a great idea. It's very helpful. It'll do some good things for you if you manage money wisely in the family. It'll improve communication in the family. It'll reduce stress and conflict in the home. And it also sets a good example for the children. Now, speaking of children, you should teach your children about money. Most children do not know how to manage money at all. They're generally not taught about it in schools anymore, maybe years ago in home economics, things like that. But nowadays, very little, if anything, is taught in schools about money to children. So therefore, it's our job as parents to teach them about money. We really have to guide them and show them the correct way to handle money and to manage their finances. One way of doing this is the envelope system. Now, just as we work, and then at the end of the week or the end of the month, whatever it may be, we get our paycheck for the hours we worked. Children can work around the house and do chores, and they can make an allowance. And then when they make that money, that allowance at the end of the week, you can give them 3 envelopes and mark them, write on them. One for giving, one for saving, and one for spending. And this teaches them to budget their money and to be responsible for it. The old saying, money doesn't grow on trees, the kids will learn that. They'll learn that it's finite, there's a limit to it, they have however much they have, and they need to give what they're going to give, save what they're going to save, and spend what they're going to spend. And then when it's gone until they get their next payday, their paycheck for doing their chores. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and God bless.